Hey everybody, this is Brian Scott from Union Underground. You are listening to my weekly mixtape with Brian Colburn. Let's get it on.
Welcome to My Weekly Mixtape, a podcast that takes the classic mixtape approach to building a modern playlist. I'm your host, Brian Colburn. Tonight, I'm thankful to be joined by Brian Scott, lead vocalist for Union Underground. Brian, thank you so much for joining me on My Weekly Mixtape, man.
Brian, great to be with you, man. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to start by asking you the same question I ask all of my first-time guests, and that is, what does the word mixtape mean to you?
I actually, so the word mixtape, I actually have a very painful childhood experience.
Oh, no.
With the word mixtape. So this was probably 7th grade, okay? I remember on Fridays, you could always send flowers or some kind of card or something to someone you're interested in, right? Like kind of a secret admirer Friday thing, right? So I remember being interested in this one girl, of course, that did not notice me, as the world works, right? And the entire week prior to Friday, I put this mixtape together. And back then, of course, you had the old jam box with the 2 cassette recorders,
Yes,
right?
Sir.
And so you would just record one song to the next thing and then put in another tape, record it, blah, blah, blah. It took all week to put it together. I gave it to her on Friday, 0 response, right? So that's my experience with mixtape. Right. That was my first experience with putting a mixtape together. And it was not good, Brian. It pains me to this day to think about it. So thanks for bringing it up.
Oh my God, it took 50-something episodes and finally a negative story with mixtapes. I am so sorry, but look, we have all been there, man. I know I have made mixtapes for people that have fallen on deaf ears, so I am with you on that 100%, man.
Childhood pain. I put my heart and soul into that mixtape, and 0.
Well, you were able to channel that frustration into some amazing music. So let's get into that, shall we?
That's probably where it started.
Well, I want to go all the way back to the beginning, and I'm not talking about
Okay.
An Education in Rebellion, because we're going to get to that, but I'm talking about the self-produced Union Underground album, which contained the first mixes of a lot of songs that you eventually hear on Rebellion. You were a producer at this point, working with a lot of bands from in and around the Texas area. Did working with various artists and different bands who all had their own different sounds help you decide on the direction that Union Underground was going to go when you were first writing these tunes?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, anyone you work with or produce with or write with always has, even if it's a project that's not even in the genre at all, can influence your own work, of course, So yeah, there were always moments working with other artists where I thought, man, that idea that I just gave this guy would be fantastic for this blah, blah, blah song I'm working on with Union. So yeah, it happens all the time, for sure.
Now, before the band was signed to Columbia Records imprint Portrait Records, you guys achieved some great success on your own, which speaks volumes to the music itself. How did the showcasing and label conversations unfold before you finally inked that deal with Portrait?
Well, it was a long process. Sometimes to the outside, it seems like, wow, this happened really fast for this band. So it really takes a lot longer than it seems. I mean, we did so many showcases, so many meetings, flying back and forth to do showcases in California. We did several showcases in Texas, before it ever gets to a level that they're even considering it. So I think we broke them down. They finally just we can't get rid of these guys. So, let's do this.
Well, let's move on to the album you're celebrating this year as part of the Back to the 2000s tour with Soil, Raw, and Flaw, and Education in Rebellion, which contained remixes of a bulk of the songs that you released on the self-titled indie album, The Union Underground, along with some new material that would go on to become, as far as I'm concerned, nu metal classics in the form of South Texas Death Ride, Revolution Man, and Turn Me On, Mr. Deadman. The album is approaching the quarter-century mark this year, and if you consider the original 97 album that the songs came from, it's past that benchmark already. Yet, these songs still sound modern and fresh in today's hard rock and metal climate. What was the secret to Rebellion's longevity?
Well, thank you for that, first of all. And I mean, there's never a formula. I think sometimes just things align properly at the right time. You know, some of the songs from the self-released one did end up on Rebellion. But then, you know, songs like South Texas Death Ride, Dead Man, actually, and Revolution Man were some of the really kind of, I would call, thrown together almost at the end before the release date was approaching. So sometimes just the ones that you don't focus on too much end up being the best ones, you know. And I think, you know, there were a couple of songs on that self-released record that I kind of wish would have been on Rebellion, but, you know, we kind of have to pick and choose. So I'm extremely happy with the record, and I think it's fantastic. I mean, I'll put it on now myself, which most people don't do. I mean, you know, and I just think it's great. I love that record. I'm a big fan of it myself.
Same here. And I want to touch on something you had talked about, because there were actually, I want to say, 5 songs that didn't make the jump. That would be Breathe, Without, Bleeding Mary, Wrong Again, and Apathetic Me. Was that based on your or the band's input, or was Portrait involved in deciding what songs made the jump to the major label album?
Not, you know, they had an input, but it was ultimately our decision. And me being a producer on the record gives that a lot of weight too, where you can kind of make those decisions. But I think there were a lot of songs we liked from the self-released record that we just didn't feel fit the tone, especially once we started putting them in order, like just mocking up the order of the record, which is, you know, no longer important these days, of course, right? But we wanted the record, when you put it on, to have a certain flow. And we just thought those were the 10 songs that did it.
Well, here's where my music nerd curiosity comes into play, just from somebody who reads the liner notes and studies the album art as I listen for many, many decades.
I'm the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. On the original Union Underground CD, track 3 was called Supersonic, which anyone who owns Rebellion would know the song as Trip with Jesus. I've always been curious if there was a reason behind renaming the song.
Well, not really. I don't remember having like any intention behind that. I just thought, why not just call it what the lyric says, right? So, and maybe at the time I thought Supersonic was just a little pretentious. I don't know. Or just, you know, Trip with Jesus obviously refers to the lyric. So it was an easy choice. But that's a good catch. Very few people have ever brought that up to me. Because obviously there's not a lot of people that have heard the self-released record, except the devoted music nerds.
And college radio at the time, and it was definitely something I saw at 90.3 WMSC when I was at Montclair State University Radio. Now, for those of us who weren't in radio or the San Antonio, Texas area, and weren't lucky enough to score that original self-titled CD, is there any chance that the songs that didn't make the jump could be maybe re-released down the road at any point, maybe a deluxe edition or just something so that people can kind of experience these songs that happened prior to Rebellion?
I've always considered that. Breathe in particular is a song that I've always wanted to see come to light, you know, in the proper version, right? There's an acoustic version that no one's heard that is fantastic. That, you know, that song, you know, if you're familiar with it, if you think about it, would lends itself to that. And there's a really cool version that I have had recorded for years that probably will make it to a release at some point, and maybe even the original version. It's hard to, when a track has been around for that long, to not want to reinvent it, or reimagine it. But sometimes things just shouldn't be toyed with. And I think the original version of that song is great. That was another one too that we thought, I loved the kind of Alice in Chains, Soundgarden-y thing it had going on. And it just didn't gel with Rebellion, we thought. So I would love to see that song rear its head at some point.
Well, back to some Rebellion talk here. We talked about these songs earlier, Revolution Man and Turn Me On, Mr. Deadman. I'm going to go into some radio-ese here, but if you're a fan of the Beatles, you probably know the story about playing Revolution 9 backwards and hearing Turn Me On, Deadman. And I remember this being a hot topic debate between myself and a few fellow radio colleagues when this album first dropped. I've always wondered, is there any merit to the songs being almost a hat tip to the Fab Four?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Always been a huge Beatles fan, which again, in Revolution Man, there's clearly Beatles references, John Lennon references. So I was a bit obsessed with it at the time. And I just loved the story of that. So I was intrigued by it, and I loved the title. And of course, I just added Mr. to it. I mean, that was the only embellishment I made to the idea as far as the title, right? But it's absolutely a hat tip, for sure.
Well, on your first tour for An Education in Rebellion, the lineup featured opening act Linkin Park on their first ever tour, and you would later tour with them again during the Ozzfest 2001 lineup. With the world sadly losing Chester, I would love to hear what your experiences were with him as well as the rest of the band during a time when both bands were making their respective debuts on the nu metal scene at the time.
Yeah, that was we lost a great one with Chester, as everyone feels. And what's funny is to hear you say opening band Linkin Park. Because when was the last time you heard that? I mean, very shortly after that run, they never opened for anyone ever again, and rightfully so, right? It was a fantastic first record, and we talked about it a lot on the road. And they were playing versions of those songs that were very different than what ended up being on the record. But it still had, the main portions, the main hooks of the songs, the choruses. But it was cool to watch that develop with them, once the record actually came out. And Chester and I specifically talked about that a lot, like the changing versions of it and how he kind of wanted it to be a little more raw. And, they thought the studio was maybe messing with the process a bit much. But I mean, he's kind of an old school rock guy, so which made their combination fantastic between him and Mike. Those guys on the road, I would always hear them from the dressing room when they were opening for us, right? Which is just even funny to say. But I would hear them from the dressing room even way before the songs were really honed. They were playing pretty primitive versions of some of those songs, and you could just feel it. I knew it. Just, sometimes you just feel that. You don't have to try and find it. You just hear it and you know it. I'm like, man, this band's going to be huge. And then once Chester played me a demo version of In the End, I'm like, man, it's over. You guys are going to be so huge within 12 months. Yeah. Kudos to those guys. And, I miss hearing his voice. It would be fantastic to hear new Linkin Park songs with Chester, And I hope those guys, have no idea what their plans are currently. I haven't followed what any intentions are with even going forward. I don't know. Mike has a lot of stuff he does on his own. So it would be great to see some new music from them, whoever's involved,
Now, as I mentioned in that last question, in 2001, Union Underground appeared on the 2001 lineup of Ozzfest. Within a lineup that, when you say it now, just sounds like a dream lineup in hindsight. Drowning Pool, Nonpoint, Taproot, Mudvayne, Black Label Society, Disturbed, Linkin Park, Papa Roach, Slipknot, Marilyn Manson, and the gods of metal, Black Sabbath. The show I was at was actually the infamous PNC Bank Arts Center show in Homedale, New Jersey, August 11th, 2001, when Jacoby Shaddix from Papa Roach invited fellow lawn seat dwellers to throw mud at the stage, turning Ozzfest into a mud-tossing riot. Now, I've heard both good and bad stories about Ozzfest from both the business side of things and the musical side of the equation, and I would love to know what Union Underground's experiences were on that tour and the impact it had on the band as a whole.
I mean, well, it had a huge impact on our exposure, of course. And we had just come off of a tour with Marilyn Manson, Guns, God, and Government. And so it was kind of a perfect transition for us because he was on that run as well. And, so we kind of had that association straight off that tour. And it kind of made sense for us to do that. And, like you said, some of the horror stories on the business side of it is, I mean, you clearly, at least in our situation at the time, and most bands, especially on the second stage, and even some of the bands on the first stage, didn't get paid a dime. You actually paid to be on Ozzfest.
Wow.
So, hats off to Sharon, if you want to give kudos to that. But I understand the trade-off of exposure in lieu of payment. I mean, I get that. But, record labels paid a lot of money to have their bands on Ozzfest. It's crazy. But it was absolutely worth it in the end, of course. I mean, some of our biggest fans were solidified on that run to this day. I mean, they mention it constantly.
Which is what I'm about to do now, because going back 23 years when I saw you on the second stage of that show, one of my vivid memories of it is something that unfortunately we'll never be able to see again, because the late Dave Williams from Drowning Pool joins you guys on stage for what I consider to be a pretty unique collaboration.
That's fantastic that you saw that show. Now, what city was that in again?
Homedale, New Jersey.
Oh, yeah. We did Cowboys From Hell from Pantera.
Yes, sir. And Dave came out with the Texas flag draped over his shoulders, and you guys just slayed it. My buddies and I knew we were seeing something special when that moment happened.
Dude, thank you. Yeah, and we knew it felt that way to us as well. We just kind of had the idea early in the day. And then so me and Dave are in, I think it was on their bus. And we're just like, we're reading the lyrics from the CD going, wait, you take this line, I'll take this line, you take that line. And then we'll come together on these words. And then we'll do this. It was literally like 30 minutes before we went on stage. We were just working this shit out. Right.
Really?
Yeah, it was super fun. But of course, we're all huge Pantera fans. So those things the lyrics are instilled in us. So we just like, 2 lines, 2 lines, 2 lines, 2 lines. We'll do the chorus together, 2 lines, 2 lines, done, And we had a blast doing that. I have fantastic video footage from that. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I'm just going to throw this out in the universe, celebrating Dime, Vinny, Dave. That footage needs to see the light of day, man.
It does. Yeah. I should dig it up because, I have it, back in the day, of course, we're doing like the mini DV thing. So I've just mountains of them. And that full song is in there from a couple of different angles, because there were several people filming from our crew. So, that might have to come out of the vault at some point because, as you just said, what it represents is pretty historic in many ways. All three of those guys. I mean, it's insane. By the way, so you were at Ozzfest. You look so young, Bryan, by the way.
46.
For you, okay. So yeah, we're not that far off. So so you were a young lad cruising around Ozzfest. Okay.
Yep. Well, I'll never forget the day for a myriad of reasons. Obviously, the bands, the music, and all that great stuff. But from a little bit of a darker perspective, it was August of 2001. So that was the last concert experience I had prior to 9/11, when at that point in time, the concert experiences were kind of forever changed.
It is really kind of thought of as the, that's the one 2001 was just the lineup was so I mean, you mentioned them all earlier, and it's amazing. The lineup's amazing, and everyone. There's so many bands. Linkin Park, Disturbed. Everyone was just getting their thing going, and so it was a cool time to see everyone launching. Mudvayne was still very new, Union. It was fantastic to see everyone launching their thing and all doing it together. It was killer.
Yeah, we knew we were witnessing history on many levels that day when we were watching bands. And, we forever said, like, this is a group we're going to be seeing for years to come. And I'm so glad to be able to be sitting here talking to you about this 23 years later. So,
yeah.
Now, as someone who's also always been a fan of wrestling, there was no way we're talking Union Underground without talking about Across the Nation, which served as the theme for WWE's Raw from 2002 to 2006. How did this partnership come together?
It was really just a label thing. The compilation that has, once again, a lot of the guys that were on Ozzfest are on that as well. Like Drowning Pole, I think Manson's on it. Disturbed has a song on that compilation as well.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, I believe it was a Sony Music release. And then, we just got lucky enough to be involved in it through that connection. And John Johnston, I believe he's still with them. I don't know. He was their big music director over there. And he was a fan of ours, and he pitched it to Columbia for us to be on there. So it was a cool process because these theme songs, like how, at first I was like, I don't know if I'm going to use someone else's music to build our thing. But all he did was send me a bass track that just went boom, bam, boom, ba, boom, ba, boom, ba, whatever the theme song little melody piece for the wrestler that we were, each band represented a particular wrestler, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, you know what? If that's all you're going to give me, that's fantastic. Because I can just build a song around it, and it becomes one of our own things, so that a Union fan doesn't think we're like doing a cover song, right? So, because I had talked to the Papa Roach camp, or not Papa Roach, but Drowning Pole and Disturbed camps about like how are we going to approach this? Like, what are you guys doing? I'm not sure how to approach it. So we all we're connecting with each other to kind of figure out how to do it and have it still sound like one of our songs respectively. Right. So, the process was fun. I would just kind of put a verse together and send it over to those guys and like, hey, is this going in the right direction for you guys? Is it cool? And they were just like, hey man, whatever you want to do sounds fantastic. So we had a lot of freedom to just do whatever we wanted. And it's, to this day, one of a fan favorite for sure, which we'll be playing on, this year as well.
I would be shocked if you didn't.
Yeah.
Now, the one question I want to ask about it is on the Forcible Entry CD, Across the Nation is censored. It's moved to the music, play that uckin' music.
Yeah.
Is there an uncensored version that you have in the vault because that needs to get released? I'm 46 years old. I can hear the F word.
Yeah. We're all very familiar with potty mouth, right? Well, I have it. Yeah. But, I do not own that master, right, myself. So I would not be able to put it out. Now, I've heard, it's never been released through Sony or through the WWF or E with the potty mouth version, right?
Yep.
I have it, maybe I'll just leak it. But I don't think it's ever technically been, even online. Anytime I hear a clip of that song in someone's TikTok or just any kind of silliness, it's always the censored version. I don't think anyone has access to it.
Well,
I have it in the vault. Yeah.
I'm sensing an anniversary release. Maybe even though Portrait's folded, maybe this could happen somehow through another subsidy of Columbia.
Yeah, who knows? You never know.
Now, An Education in Rebellion was such a monster album. And then obviously we talked about Across the Nation becoming synonymous in both Union Underground's world as well as to WWE fans. After Portrait Records folded in 2002, the band sadly disbanded. Can you talk about that period for the group and how that likely insanely difficult decision was made?
You know, Orchard disbanding was, a subsequent thing to our decision to not continue making that second record, right? I had personally gotten to a point where I didn't feel like continuing on with that particular group of people. And not only just the band, just the group of people that I had chosen to surround myself with. And it just didn't, it wasn't working out like I thought. You know what I mean? I always had the intentions of revisiting it, but with a different camp. And it just took a bit longer than I thought. Right. But I've been doing a lot of other things. I mean, Cult of Follow is a band that I've been focusing on for years. So I hadn't even planned on revisiting the Union Underground thing until the last few years. And I'm much happier now, even. I mean, I had really gotten to a point where I thought, you know what, I'm never even going to just bring it up again. That's a part of my history. I'm not going to write any more Union Underground songs. I'm not even going to entertain the idea of doing demos. I'm just kind of done. But as you move along, I was writing things for Cult to Follow. And I thought, man, this would make a fantastic Union Underground song. And so there were so many moments where I was kind of putting demos aside under a Union folder, thinking, man, these would be great Union songs. And I just knew that there's just still too many people that would love to see it continue, and I will deliver that.
Well, you were talking about Cult to Follow. There's a few songs I feel like I'd be doing a disservice to this interview if we didn't talk about, because Leave It All Behind is a friggin' monster of a track. Lies is a hefty, emotional song. And then you've got Murder Medley, which is just an absolute assault. Was Cult to Follow the vibe you were looking for Union Underground to kind of move towards at the time of the band's disbandment?
You know what? That's a great question. I had never even considered that. Probably because none of those things are really mapped out. You're just writing, but yeah, I mean, some of the things that we were writing just sounded so, for the second record, the Union record, just sounded so not like Union that I just became disenchanted with it. Right. And sometimes when people start working on their second record, there's too many chiefs, where before when you're working on your first record, there's kind of a singular vision, or, there's only a couple of people really writing together, and there's not a lot of distractions. But those things change. And I thought everyone just got too distracted in the song, and the music just no longer sounded like Union Underground. So I see that for sure in some of those songs, There's a song called 10 Seconds from Panic that's a Cult to Follow song that I always thought, that's definitely me writing a Union Underground song without knowing it. And that phase, when I was writing the first batch of Cult stuff, is where I realized that I kind of started putting things aside. This has got to be a Union thing. This will be a Union thing. And I sat on some of them for years until recently, and started pulling them out of the files, It's hard to kind of keep those things separated. I mean, Cult to Follow's, overall quite a different vibe, but there are those moments where you're like, dude, that could be a Union song, and some of that Cult stuff for sure. Mm-hmm.
Now in 2016, you formed a side project, Into the Fire, with Soils, Tim King, and Adam Zadell, along with Will Hunt of Evanescence. And there are two songs I'd like to talk about: Spit You Out and From the Medicine. I'd love to hear how this project came together. And then, since you're going to be on the road with Soil for the Back to the 2000s tour this spring, is there any chance that these songs could pop up in some kind of guest appearance encore type situation here?
That has been a question I think we've gotten it from all sides. Tim has mentioned it a few times too. Man, I keep getting questions about whether or not we're going to do Into the Fire songs. We might, you never know. It might happen. I would imagine that, at the end of the Union Underground set one night, we might have the guys on and do something fun for sure.
Awesome.
I mean, it's probably inevitable. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you look at the lineup and you're going, well, I mean, you guys are all there. Couldn't hurt, right?
We're all there, and there's got to be a drummer in the room, I would imagine. Someone's going to be there. Yeah.
They'll bring all 4 drummers up, all 4 bands at the same time. Make it.
Yeah. I would love to do that. Yeah, we actually talked about that, and it'll probably happen. That's a fantastic EP. I mean, we call it EP. It's just 2 songs, but we plan on doing some more of those, actually. It's just, I mean, everyone's so busy with their original projects, and, we call it a side project, but it's just whenever we feel that we'll have time to release it and kind of promote it properly, then we're sitting on an acoustic song that is fantastic. And we've been sitting on it for a few years now, and that will definitely see the light of day because it has to. So, it's just all about timing. There's a lot of moving parts, with everyone's projects.
Of course. And one other project I'd like to bring up before going back to Union. I'm a cover song fanatic. And in 2022, you released a solo cover of the Eagles' Take It Easy. And I thought you brought an extremely unique approach to a song that everybody, and I don't want to say everybody, but I would say 99% of the human race is familiar with. And that is something that is not an easy feat. Can you walk us through your arrangement of the track and what you were trying to bring to it? And now I'm just thinking back to that question. I actually called it a easy feat. That was a terrible pun and not planned in any way, shape, or form. So,
yeah. Well, thanks for bringing that up because, I did not expect that. I'm sitting on before I answer your question, I'm sitting on an official music video that will be released right after the Back to the 2000s run.
Nice.
So I'm kind of sitting on the video just because, I want to have time to promote it properly and kind of get this run out of the way and focus on that. And had a ton of fun doing it. Now the streaming, like you said, has been available for a while, but the video will come out this summer, and then it'll finally be available. And so as a kid, I would go on road trips, camping trips with my mom and dad, and the Eagles were just playing in the car nonstop on all these trips. It was a huge part of and this is before, I had started playing any instruments. So the Eagles were just kind of burned into my brain, and I loved it. And that was the song, which is funny because the original version is like almost a bluegrass track, which is, not typically something I would gravitate to, right? But I loved their entire catalog, and I thought, it'd be fun to slow this song down. And I'm a huge Tom Petty fan as well.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
Tom Petty's my favorite artist of all time, and somehow we just became best friends.
Yes, right on. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Tom Petty is it's unbelievable, how big a fan I am. So it was one of those, I wanted to kind of take that fast-paced kind of bluegrass vibe, slow it way down, like to a Tom Petty kind of road trip tempo was my whole intention there. And that's really how I approach it. Like if Tom Petty covered this song, what would be the tempo and feel? And so that's kind of how I got to that point with that song.
Amazing.
And I had it's such a blast doing it. And there's a lot of family memories and childhood memories attached to it, which was the reason for me choosing it. And I knew that, and probably not a lot of people have heard of it because I really haven't promoted it. I mean, it's available on streaming, but I haven't really talked about it much. So when the video comes out, I know it's a little strange for people, right? Even though these days, I mean, you can do a million different things. I mean, there's so much content, but it is a little strange for people to hear that, it's like, wait, is this guy going to do like a country rock record next or what's happening, So it can be a little odd for people, I would imagine, but whatever. I mean, I had a fantastic time recording it.
I think it came out fantastic. And now I have to ask, is this part of a larger project that you're planning to do down the road at some point?
Yeah, I will. So the Brian Scott stuff, I will reserve for things like, cover songs like that one. I even have some instrumentals that I would like to release under the Brian Scott name and use that more for because if I just sit down and just wrote a song naturally, it's going to sound like a Colts Follow song. So I would just release, or Union, right? So I would just release my kind of natural things under those two brands. But the things that are kind of out of my norm, like the Take It Easy song, I will reserve for my solo releases, because there would be no reason to release a Colts Follow sounding song under Brian Scott.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
of course,
I'll reserve. And like I said, I have a few instrumentals that I would really like to see be released for sure. At heart, I'm a guitar player. So I have a lot of pieces that I've recorded over the years that I would like to release that have no vocals.
Be very interested to hear that. Now, while we're talking about new music, over the last few years, there's been rumblings of new songs from the Union Underground, and one track has also debuted live. So with that, is there a chance that there's new studio tracks from Union Underground coming our way?
Yep. Now, even though Back to the 2000s has that theme to it, right?
Right.
We're still going to play a couple of songs that will be on the new record. Faith Collapsing is a song that we're playing live now that will probably be on the record. That's the one that there was a clip online for a bit. False Caterpillars will 100% be a single from the new record, but no one's heard that. No one's heard it outside of the camp.
Right.
I'm not going to play that live yet, because just kind of the obvious reasons. There'll probably be too much time between, because everyone just records everything and shows, right? So I don't want a new unreleased song floating around too long before it's released, just for the obvious reasons. So we won't be playing that song, but we will be playing a song called Faith Collapsing, which is also a track that will probably be on the new record.
Well, we've been talking about it a lot tonight. Union Underground is back on the road this March for the Back to the 2000s tour with Soil, Raw, and Flaw. Can you talk about how this specific lineup came together? We've talked about what fans are going to be able to expect at these shows, but the first leg is in the month of March. Is there any additional legs that are going to be coming down the road throughout 2024?
We are putting together a second leg. I can't say much about it yet because it's all in the works. So what month and what kind of part of the year is still up in the air a bit. There's also, speaking of Soil and Union, there are hints of a little UK-ness this year. Ooh. So can't say much about that yet, but that is in the works as well. So, and that's all in 2024. So, we'll have to do a second run of this. Now, whether or not all the bands will be involved, I'm not sure yet. Depends on everyone's schedules. I would hope so, because everyone's very excited about this lineup. The response with having Raw and the Flaw guys on has been huge. Raw, to be honest, I was not that familiar with them before we started putting this together, and I kind of went back and revisited some of their stuff, and they're fantastic. And their new stuff is really good as well.
Yeah.
So that's going to be cool to see those guys, be able to perform their newer stuff. I'm really looking forward to it. And hopefully some of these guys will be available for leg 2 as well.
And then the big question, is there a guesstimated date for the follow-up to An Education in Rebellion?
Oh, God. I could never commit to that. I've been hinting at it for a long time, No, not an official date. And also too, because I'm not sure how I want to go about releasing it. Things have changed so much, in the last few years about just how people consume music. And, I'm not completely convinced that I want to put out a full album, or if I just want to concentrate on single releases and then eventually have a compilation thing or have an EP at first. I'm not really sure. That's all up in the air. That doesn't affect the writing process, obviously, but it does affect the length of time prior to a release. So we'll see. It's been in the works. But it's finally coming to fruition, all of the intentions the last few years. And I am guilty of promising dates before they're realistic. You know?
Well, Bryan, this has been an absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to catching the tour when you guys swing through New Jersey in March, so we'll be sure to catch up there. Thank you so much for joining me on My Weekly Mixtape.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
To those listening, all the songs we've discussed today, I'm embedding in a playlist over at myweeklymixtape.com. While you're there, be sure to check out the full catalog of My Weekly Mixtape episodes. And if you like what you're hearing on the show, you can help me out by either telling a friend, leaving the show a 5-star review wherever you're tuning in, or becoming a Patreon mixtaper at patreon.com/myweeklymixtape. That's all for this week. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, enjoy the tunes.